Hey everybody, Ragnarok here, and I've been playing a lot of games lately revolving around the accelerated dragon and the Sicilian, and a big attack I've encountered a lot is the Yugoslav attack. So I wanted to make this video and the next video highlighting the main ideas behind the attack for both sides. In this video we're going to be going over the accelerated dragon differentiated to the hyper accelerated dragon as well as the regular dragon, and what it is it's e4, c5, which is the Sicilian. And if you see the hyper accelerated dragon, it's going to revolve around the g6 move here. Really hyper accelerated because the main idea is black wants to get this bishop to g7 really quickly. Now in this variation, which is the dragon, we're going to have d6 followed by d5 or d4, c takes d5, knight takes d4, and then you're going to follow up with g6. And this is the accelerated dragon. Now the normal dragon would have something different where you would be something like, essentially this is the formation that you're going to have in the dragon in any variation. And the hyper accelerated versus the accelerated means you're just doing it quicker. So in this game we're going to go over a game that I played as black, where I played the accelerated dragon, and just go over the main ideas of everything in it. And again, the next video is going to be all about the Yugoslav attack, where I played as white and executed the same idea. So first, e4, c5, and then we're going to play knight to f3, d6. The main idea here is to prevent the knight from coming in, as well as this pawn from being pushed, because a lot of times this knight likes to come here, and in the Sicilian you really want to protect that, as well as protect this pawn on c5 too. So d4 is a very standard move because white is going to take both central pawns, almost kind of forcing the c pawn to take, but it doesn't necessarily have to. But in most cases you will take back with c takes d4, knight takes on d4, and then you're going to follow up with g6. And this is the accelerated dragon. So normally people are going to go for knight c6, knight c3, and then bishop to g7. And then this is where if you see somebody do bishop going to e3, it means that they're getting ready for the Yugoslav attack. The Yugoslav attack is really going to have a lot of pressure here. The main idea being to have your bishop as well as your queen here on the same file, bringing your bishop onto the h6 square, and then because black is going to castle kingside, you really kind of force your opponent's hand by bringing your bishop here. They either take, or if they don't take, your bishop is going to take theirs, which is going to weaken these dark squares. And when you fianchetto your bishop, especially on the king side, you really want to watch out for these squares. So trading that off is really a big idea in the Yugoslav attack, but it's not always the main idea. It is always a threat there, and we'll see how that unfolds here. So bishop does go to e3, and then knight is going to come here, and again this pawn can't push forward because this pawn is here blocking it. And a lot of times in the hyper accelerated dragon, this pawn won't be pushed, so you're saving a move by getting your bishop developed and fianchetto'd really quickly, but you're kind of opening yourself up to that pawn push if you don't push d6. It's just a safer alternative. So knight is going to come into f6, and then this is a key square. So when doing the Yugoslav attack, you don't really want to do it out of order, because if, let's say that if we back up and the queen decides to come here first, I now have this square, and this is blocking the attack for the bishop coming into h6, and it's also really almost kind of forcing this bishop to trade. I mean, the best square it can come to would be bishop to g5. It's not really going to do anything there, and then my knight can probably just swing back here with a potential attack, potentially with that bishop there, but could come here and attack the queen. You know, so it's not really a great square for it. The bishop's actually much better off here. So if you can take this square on g4, definitely go for it as black. So that's why in the Yugoslav attack, you're going to see most players are going to go to f3 before the queen comes here. I mean, there's a lot of different orders, but as long as this structure is maintained, queen coming to d2 eventually, that is the Yugoslav attack. And then next we're going to have black castle, queen coming up with the main goal to castle, and that's why this f3 now protects the e4 pawn, but it also weakens the king side. And when you see that, most of the time, now not always, but white is really not going to plan to castle kingside. Instead it's going to go queenside, because this rook is going to be right here, and it's going to have a nice diagonal on the queen and a weakness of the d4 d5 square. So queen is going to come here preparing to bring the h6 attack, And if you notice, once the bishop is here, it does have a diagonal on the bishop as well as the rook. So it kind of almost forces black to either trade, or at least, you know, if they waste a move moving the rook when the bishop is here, bishop can still take right away, and then the king is in this awkward square here. So that's the main idea of that. So queen did end up coming to d2. Knight comes to c6, and then bishop comes to c4. That's a main idea as well. Bishop is going to be really, really strong here. And it also does a good job of blocking when the knight comes into the e5 square, because that pin on the queen and bishop, which you'll see in my next move. Now, the bishop has a nice diagonal here, but again, the rook is also going to come here and have a file on the castled king. Now, if I know the king is going to castle queenside, my goal is going to be to get my rook here. So first, I move my knight here to attack the bishop. Bishop has to move back. And then I just develop my bishop. There's really no other square for this bishop to go to. He can't come here because there's two pieces attacking that square. The knight is doing very well on the d4 square. And then you really can't go anywhere up here because all of these pawns are in a nice little island preventing forward movement for the bishop. So the bishop is really best here, and it could eventually come to this square with a nice diagonal on the rook once these pawns are kind of weakened, which you'll actually see in this game. So this is actually where my opponent makes a mistake, because the best move here would be one, either to castle, which is pretty good, or to push actually h4 instead of h3. Now why he did that, I'm not exactly sure, the h3 move, but h4 would have been better because you want to push this pawn, and you're going to push both these pawns, or all three of these pawns, and have all four on the king side, because the fianchetto makes a weakness, and having this pawn here with the eventual push of h5 is really going to capture into this weakness, open up the file for the rook. This rook's going to come over as well, and then just having this queen and bishop all on this, there's a lot of pressure that's really tough for black to defend. So if you do see h4, the best move is usually going to be h5. Bishop can still come in here next move. You don't really want to take because then the queen is kind of in here, which isn't an immediate threat right away, but it's not generally good to have a queen really close there. So let's see, he did do h3, which again I think is a mistake, but kind of give me more time. And that's really the opening, so definitely go check out ragchess.com where I talk about my opening principles. It's really all about executing your plan quickly enough. And if you waste time moving pieces like pawns one square where it could have gone two, eventually he's probably going to push this pawn again anyway if he has time, but he's given me time to move forward with my plan, which is to get my rook on the same file as his king. And he still hasn't castled, which he, I believe, does. No, not right away. So this is actually a bad move as well, because this pawn is doing well defending this the e4 pawn. And by pushing it, he's forcing my knight to move, but my knight was going to move here anyway, which I do on my next move, because of the pin or fork on the bishop as well as queen. Now, of course, he could, if he wanted to, just move his queen, but my goal is to really trade off this dark square bishop, because I have a really strong bishop on the same diagonal as his rook right now, but eventually his castled king. So by going right here, I'm actually kind of forcing him to take the bishop right here. And I really want to get my rook here in the game, because there are a lot of tricks that can occur with here. Let's say the bishop were, if I go back a couple of moves, let's just play this out. Let's say he castled, and then I do this pin here. So there are some pins, let's say the bishop did. I have played a game before where this occurred. You can actually take right here, because the main point of the dragon is this attack on this file here. So you can just take back, and you're attacking the queen and the rook. The queen's not going to take back because he's just going to lose material. He's going to be down, I believe, a bishop, basically about 3 points. And that's not going to work out for him. So he's not going to take, but this just gives you a really strong position. Everything's kind of out of sync now. This knight can be pushed around with a move like f5, and he's just not in the great position here. Now, at the same time, I've also got this bishop on file, so my queen can come here with a double attack on the b2 square, and it's just not really a good idea. So that's why I think this bishop really needs to stay where it is there. So if we go back to f4, knight comes in here, and then the bishop is going to take, followed by the rook taking back. And here he's kind of bringing his plan together. Now, you do want to have all these pawns here. This pawn really should be here, and maybe even already by now moved up to h5. And then he's got really a nice pawn structure at this point, but it's a little bit too late for him to execute. And it's really cool about this game because it's not often. I really do like to analyze my games after with live chess, but it's not often that I see that I don't have any mistakes in the game. Now you can have inaccuracies, mistakes, and blunders. In this game, this was the only mistake that I had made according to the engine. I kind of like this move because there's attack on the b2 pawn. He still hasn't castled yet. And it also kind of weakens this here. I can maybe potentially take somewhere here, anywhere, and I'm going to be able to have an extra attacker with my bishop, queen, and rook on his d5, d4 knight. So yeah, I mean, he can bring back here, and maybe that's probably what he should have done, but at the time he castled. But yeah, that was really the only mistake in the game. But this is really still the general idea of the dragon. This rook is going to be in this square, knight, bishop here, and then this bishop's really going to hang back while you're castled. Your queen eventually comes in. You're forcing your attack on the king side, or queen side. He's forcing his attack on the king side. It's really about who does it first. So I bring both rooks together, and I even could have taken here. If we go back one move, the reason I do want to address that it was a mistake, I could have actually taken this knight here. So it kind of is weird because if you go back to my article about how the pieces move, the piece value, I do have a chart there of all the pieces. Now, a rook being 5 and a knight being 3 points, you can kind of see like I kind of given up a knight, rook for a knight, 5 to 3 points. But you can come in here with this knight with an attack on the queen, so a tempo. Queen has to move. And then you can actually push on e5 right here, which is pretty good because, you know, if the queen does take here, you can take back the knight. He can't actually take this pawn with the bishop because the rook is going to pin the king. Again, this is why he should have castled earlier, but still this attack is definitely here. Even still, if he doesn't do that, let's say when I push here, he moves, say, the knight. It's black's turn. Because he must have, yeah. So I push here. So if he takes the knight and I take back, he kind of has to do something. Like if he's going to move away, I'm attacking his bishop. So even if his bishop moves somewhere, I still have this. But even if I didn't, I could actually also go here. So it's kind of like a double threat, attacking his bishop, attacking his queen, attacking his rook eventually. So there's a lot of really good ideas. So yes, I give up material, but I get a good position and really a strong chance to with counterplay there. So let's go back to the game. I did play queen to b6. He castled. I bring my other rook over, so now I've got both of these rooks. So this knight really can't move because if it does, I have an attack on this square, trading both of my rooks for a pawn and a queen, which would be 11 points to 9. So that would be a good advantage for me. Now he comes in here with a discover attack on the queen, which is kind of why that queen move really wasn't the best move. So I ended up moving here. I guess I could have moved there right away, but I guess his knight earlier would have been there instead, which would have been a nice defense. So he takes my bishop. Now, in any game in chess, you want to think like, yes, I can take this knight back, but there's actually going to be something a little bit better in this situation. So take a look, take a second, pause the video if you like. What do you think the best move here is? All right, so we're going to go ahead. The best move I did was knight rook takes. Now again, there's the threat here. We've already traded my bishop, which is a strong bishop, but it's not really doing anything right now. The goal is for it to attack here, but it really never in this game got a chance to do it. So the time of his knight going to, actually, if you think about the knight's moves, it went to here, 2, 3, 4 moves, while all my other pieces were able to move around. So I take back the knight. So he really has only one move. He really can take here. He can't take with queen because my rook is attacking that piece as well. But the cool thing, or the thing to think about when you're white here is opening your king up. So I do have a potential check, but first you want to take this pawn here. So I'm actually down in the exchange because I've given up a bishop and a rook for a knight and a pawn at this point, 8 points to 4, I believe. But nice tempo on the queen as well as the pawn here. He's going to move up here, and we have check. The threat here being that his king, he actually had resigned at this point. There really wasn't a good move for the queen anyway, I don't think. Where could the queen have gone? Even if it backs up here, you still have the same idea. So he moves up here. Really nothing he can do. He's kind of like saying, hey, why don't you trade queens? I could have traded queens. You know, I would have had some pieces back. I guess it would have been, I would have been down a little bit, but that's not what I wanted at this point. I want to finish the game. So check. He would have to move here. And if you guys see the fork, which is right here, it's actually, it is a fork. His king has to move, but I've also got some threats here coming as well. Queen takes, and I can see, again, I don't have to take this knight right away. I do have a threat of checkmate here, and I think it's pretty much unavoidable. You would have to give up here, take. Nothing you can do about that. So this was my game of the Accelerated Dragon, the main way that you want to consider playing the game. He really should have pushed this pawn earlier, I believe. Would have been a much better game for him. But think about that rook sack on the knight here as well. It really just gives you a really strong position. So getting that rook on the same file as the king does a really good job. So let me know if you guys have any questions about this. My next video is going to be me playing as white with the Yugoslav attack to let you show you guys what that can actually look like as well. So you can kind of look, if you're going to play the dragon, kind of know what to expect as well. So I'll see you guys in the next video, and I hope you enjoyed this one.